What is going on, all you Pokemon collecting maniacs out there? This is Ryan, the Pika Pika Papa, and as you know, I have Excel sheets and Excel sheets and Excel sheets of Pokemon data behind the scenes here on the channel. I have booster box data, single card data, chase card data, I've got ETB data, I mean, you name it. I have an Excel sheet with data going back over the last couple years, and the thing about that is I can't possibly do enough content throughout the course of the month to highlight all of it. I just don't have enough time. So what I do here on the channel is I try and get the high level information to you either at the end of the month or the beginning of the next month, and I call it the State of the Hobby video, and that's what we're going to be looking at today. We're going to be looking at all kinds of awesome trends and information on how the XY era has performed, the Sun and Moon, the Sword and Shield, the Scarlet and Violet. We're going to talk about Blackbolt and White Flare. We're going to talk about actual grading volume and PSA in the TCG space. Like, this is a fantastic video as far as I'm concerned if you really want to keep your finger on the pulse of what's going on at the macro level of the hobby. So what we're doing right here is we're kicking it off with the XY era, because the XY era, as we all know, has been incredibly hot here as of late. So just if you don't know what you're looking at, the graph on the top and the chart on the left, that is the aggregate value of the top 20 singles cards from every single XY set that has a booster box, right? So 12 booster boxes in the XY era, 12 different sets, top 20 cards, that's the aggregate value of those 240 cards. And I chart them out, how they move month over month. And I know everybody's been talking about how crazy XY prices have been as of late, but we noticed this trend far before this whole, influx of interest around, because the new series that's coming out after Scarlet and Violet is going to feature Mega Pokemon, and Mega Pokemon originated in the XY era. But even long before that, I mean, look, this started to turn positive in January of 2024, and as you can see, the growth may not have been crazy. We're talking about up 1 or 2% month over month, but that is steady, that is organic, that is really, really strong growth. And of course, it's gotten even hotter here as of late. But what I wanted to call out is, yes, it's been incredibly hot, but we might be on the tail end of that FOMO. And what makes me think that is if you look to October of 2023, so look at that green arrow that I have there to the right of those percent changes in the top 20 price graph right there. So you will see that in October versus September, those top 20 singles cards were up 1% month over month. Then it really started to accelerate. The next month, those top 20 singles cards were up 3%, then 4.3%, then 6.3%, and then it kind of peaked up 14.75 month over month in February. But look what's happened since. Still steady growth. The cards are still doing really, really well from a price appreciation standpoint, but every single month since then, we've seen the growth slow a little bit. So again, after peaking at 14.75%, it's down to 10.54%. Still a heck of a month, but not 14.75, right? Then the next month, it was up 9%. Still a great month, but it isn't 10.54. And then the next month, it was down 5.87%. So I pull this information on the 15th of every single month. So it'll be very interesting to see this upcoming month if it continues to slow down or if it starts to flatten out a little bit. Now, when you look at the booster box prices, again, that's the aggregate value of the 12 booster boxes in the XY era. What you need to remember when you see this graph, and it's kind of chunky with the ups and downs and undulations all over the places, sealed collecting wasn't really a thing in the XY era. So there are very, very few sealed booster boxes out there. Not only was sealed collecting not a thing, but the print run was infinitesimal compared to what we see today. So there just aren't a lot of these sales that are happening. So that's what happens. 1 or 2 big sales or 1 or 2 down sales can really change the average of this over time. But if you were just to trend line this out, the growth has been incredible, right? Even in October of 2023, those 12 booster boxes would have set you back about $12,000. And in May of this year, and right around the 15th, it would have cost you $17,500. Yeah, it's down from $18,000 the month before, but still, that's incredible growth over that time frame. Now, one of the things I wanted to highlight too, and we're going to talk about this a little more throughout the course of this video, is I want you to take note of where the XY top 20 singles cards started off, because they started off at a paltry $4,417. The era as a whole was just super undervalued compared to a lot of the other eras that we're going to talk about. And look at where it is right now. It's almost doubled. It's up 93.5%. Remember that number. But still, the aggregate value of those top 20 singles cards today coming in at $8,547. Spoiler alert, it is nothing compared to where the top 20 singles cards are of some of these other eras that we're going to look at. So it's just an interesting jumping off point. Obviously, demand is what drives price, not age, not rarity, not anything like that. It can be as old and as rare as it wants to be, but if nobody's looking for it, it's not going to drive price. So keep that in mind, just a really fun data point. But before we get into the rest of this, obviously, we do a ton of work behind the scenes. So if you find value in this, if you have fun along the way, hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. Those two small things go a long way in helping my channel out, and it really lets me know you appreciate the work that I put in. So with that out of the way, now we're going to start looking at some of these other eras, and we're going to go to Sun and Moon. And Sun and Moon, I'm guilty of this. I've been so fixated on Sword and Shield and Scarlet and Violet going down, and I've been so fixated on the XY era popping off. I have been sleeping on what's been going on in the Sun and Moon era. And just take a look at this right here. I mean, the last 4 months, both from a booster box and both from a singles cards perspective, have been incredibly strong months. I mean, we're talking about February versus January in the singles card space. It was up just shy of 10%. And then in March, it was up 7.5%. And then in April, it was up 8.14%. And then in May, it was up 9%. I mean, these price growth, and these are incredible numbers just to see the age behind Sun and Moon. Now, Sun and Moon is a very special era in my mind. You know, you have the tag team cards, you've got Cosmic Eclipse, you've got Team Up, you've got Unified Minds, Unbroken Bonds. There are some fantastic cards and some amazing combinations out there, which is driving this. But again, if you look back to September of 2023, where we first started aggregating this information, the Sun and Moon singles cards were on their way down. They were down for 6 consecutive months before it finally started to go on this upward trajectory. Like, these are the trends and these are the things that I hope I can help you guys keep a finger on the pulse of, because when we notice things going down in price, almost always we've seen that they eventually end up reverting course and going back up. And the booster boxes is another big call out for me. So if you look at the booster box prices right there, I mean, coming in at $13,435. What a strong price point for these Sun and Moon booster boxes. So the Sun and Moon era has just been killing it. And I think it's been a ton of fun to watch what's been going on there. Now, of course, we're going to talk about Sword and Shield. I do a dedicated Sword and Shield video every single month, which I did, and I went over this in great detail, so I'm not going to do it again. But the gist of that whole video was this pattern that we've seen in the Sword and Shield space. So again, on the left is the value of the aggregate top 20 singles cards from every set that is a booster box, and to the right is the booster box prices as a whole. Now, what I wanted to call out, and I did call out in that video, was when we have seen these really high month-over-month growths in booster box prices, the month after that, I did another whole video on this, which was really cool. The month after that, we saw really strong singles cards growth. So we've said, hey, that could be a buying signal. And what did we see this month? In May versus April, we saw the booster boxes go up 20% month over month, while we saw the singles cards actually come down 5% month over month. So in my mind, we all know Sword and Shield has been soft. I don't necessarily think that this is going to result in them, the negative stopping. Like, I think it may be slowed down. I think it might still be negative month over month, or maybe it'll start to flatten out. We might find some of those really coveted support lines, and we talk about support lines a lot on this channel. Like, if you can find cards, and we'll show you some examples here in a minute, if you can find cards at their support line where the market just doesn't let it drop below a certain price, sometimes that can be a great opportunity to buy. So the other things that I wanted to call out on here is, you know, if you look at the total value of the top 20 singles cards today, as we sit for the Sword and Shield era, which we all know is a wildly popular era. You've got alt arts, you got, you know, trainer gallery cards, you have just a whole bunch of interest in Sword and Shield. The total value there is $12,263, which is about $5,500 below where the Sun and Moon top 20 singles cards is as an aggregate right now. Now, there is no guarantee that these are going to follow suit. It doesn't mean that because Sun and Moon is there at this point, Sword and Shield is eventually going to get there. But in the back of my mind, it's just a really cool comparison. So being $5,500 below where Sun and Moon is right now, you know, if it was eventually going to get up to that point, that's a 44.8% upside. And I think there's a lot of really awesome cards, and I think there's a lot of undervalued cards in Sword and Shield right now, so it could possibly get there as well. Now, the most exciting thing for me, and this might be hard to believe, especially with all of the huge price increases we've seen in the Sword and Shield era, is the booster box aggregate value right there is about $8,000 below where Sun and Moon is. Now remember, Sun and Moon print runs very, very small compared to Sword and Shield. Sword and Shield print runs, they were relatively manageable in the beginning, but then remember, Sword and Shield was in the middle of the pandemic where everything was out of stock and the Pokemon Company put the printing press on full speed. So there is going to be a lot more Sword and Shield booster boxes available to be sealed in the long run than Sun and Moon. But I will also say, I think that the collecting population has increased significantly. So that is an important factor too. Like, supply is only one portion, demand is the other. So when I think about the fact that the aggregate value of those 12 booster boxes from the Sword and Shield era is $8,000 below where Sun and Moon is right now, even if it doesn't reach Sun and Moon level, like, that still makes me think that there's a ton of room to run, a ton of upside in these Sword and Shield booster boxes. I know sometimes when you see a booster box get up into the $400 or $500 range, it can be super disappointing and it can be super discouraging, but I do think that they still have a whole lot of upside in it. Now, the really, really cool thing here is when you look at this, I want you to take a look at the starting booster box price when we did this. So in September of 2023, the value of those 12 booster boxes in the Sword and Shield era was $2,058. Now that's an important number because we're going to talk about that here in just a second, okay? So look at that again, $2,058 in September of 2023. Now remember, that was a good ways after Crown Zenith came out, right? So this is after Sword and Shield had officially, quote unquote, sunset. So when we talk about that number, the reason I wanted to bring it up is because we're going to compare it to Scarlet and Violet here in just a minute. But I do want to highlight these cards right here. Now, these are the same cards that we've been looking at in the State of the Hobby video. And the reason I'm doing this is because I don't want to include the Moonbryon, these big chase cards. They kind of do what they're going to do. They operate, they march to the beat of a different drum. They're in such high demand. The prices are so high. They don't always follow the macro market type trends. So I try and look at some of the other big chase cards, and these three fit the bill. We talk about the support lines, right? We talk about when are these cards going to start finding some support from the market. So these are the exact prices that we saw last month when we did the State of the Hobby video. And I want you to look at how the prices have changed. So that Gengar then was $639. The Giratina was $612. And that Lugia was $284. Well, guess what? Here's where the prices are today. The Gengar has dropped all the way down to $578. That Giratina is down to $543. The Lugia has held on pretty tightly, okay? It's at $271. But the thing that I want to call out, and there's no guarantees, and we'll just have to see what happens, is you're starting to see some of these cards find a support line. That Giratina is a fantastic example. At $543, you see those bright blue lines when they start to flatten out just a little bit. Is the market going to support this card at the $550 mark? It is uncanny how a lot of the times these big chase cards, they'll find support around $550 or $25 or the even hundreds. Like, it's just where the market says, listen, this card is worth $550. We will not let it drop below that no matter what's going on in the hobby. So these are the support lines we talk about a lot on the channel because they can represent a decent opportunity to buy. Don't have a crystal ball, can't predict the future, but these are certainly been some really strong buy signals in the past. So if you've been looking for some of these big chase cards, I mean, heck, that Giratina was 3 months ago was a $700 card, and now it's coming in at $550. And we have seen, remember when we looked at the Sun and Moon chart, right? Remember those first 6 months that we looked at it, the Sun and Moon was working its way down, but what happened every single month after those first 6 months of dropping? It has been up and to the right nonstop ever since. So sometimes it represents great opportunities to buy these cards, and who knows what the ceiling is for them. So really interesting comparison here between these three old cards we looked at last time. Now, as I told you, we're going to look at Scarlet and Violet, and it is hard to do a like-for-like comparison to Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield at this point. And actually, in transparency, I think it's going to be hard to do it in general because we all know Scarlet and Violet was abbreviated in terms of we normally get 12 booster box sets. This time we're only going to get 10. It's because Pokemon's doing that special Mega Evolution series that they're going to have coming out, which is going to be awesome, by the way. I am putting money away every single month because I'm going to want a ton of exposure to that era. So it's going to be hard to compare, but I thought this was a great way to represent how Scarlet and Violet and how Sword and Shield have been moving kind of in lockstep, at least over the last couple months. So what this is this is the aggregate value of those top 20 singles cards in the Scarlet and Violet era from Scarlet and Violet base to Surging Sparks, because Surging Sparks came out in November of last year, so I felt like the set is matured enough. I didn't want to put Journey together, Prismatic Evolutions, anything else in there. These are only regular sets, so it's a bit of a like-for-like comparison. But as you can see, in February, both of those generations had a really strong month-over-month jump. And then in March, they still did okay. I mean, Scarlet and Violet was essentially flat, but Sword and Shield was up 3%, so they at least moved somewhat in the same direction. But then in April, listen, Scarlet and Violet got absolutely kicked in the shins, down 12.3%. Sword and Shield still came down, not quite as aggressively as Scarlet and Violet, but that's what I would expect, because Scarlet and Violet is still brand new. We're still having lots of packs that are ripped. We're still having lots of these singles cards hitting the market, so that's to be expected. And then in May, listen, Sword and Shield was down 5%, Scarlet and Violet down 9.6%. So it's going to be interesting to see if Scarlet and Violet and Sword and Shield kind of make the turn at the same time, if they both start to flatten out or if they both start to turn positive right around the same time. But the whole reason I was talking about those booster box prices in the Sword and Shield era and when it started in September of 2023 was because I thought this is a really fascinating comparison in terms of where the Scarlet and Violet booster box prices are now compared to where the booster box prices for Sword and Shield was back in 2023. Now again, demand was totally different. Back in September 2023, you could have gotten Silver Tempest and Battle Styles and Lost Origin and Brilliant Stars, and you could have gotten a lot of stuff available on the Pokemon Center website, right? Like, you were not paying MSRP for products back then. It was just a totally different world. You were buying those booster boxes for $110, $120, etc., etc. But think about this. Those 12 booster boxes, again, this is like 8 months after the end of Sword and Shield. Those 12 booster boxes, their aggregate value was $2,050. Now look at where the 10 booster boxes, and I added in Destined Rivals. I know it just came out, but I added in $240 for Destined Rivals. 10, so 2 less booster boxes from the Scarlet and Violet era, and the aggregate value from those 10 booster boxes is over where the 12 Sword and Shield were in September of 2023, coming in at $2,200. It just goes to show you how fundamentally different the market is now compared to where it was back then. I thought that was a really interesting jumping off point and a really cool point to talk about here. So, with that being said, you know, I had said when we did the video on Scarlet and Violet in the middle of the month, I said, listen, it was down 9-point-something% month over month. I said, I don't think that the bleeding is over. I don't think that I think Scarlet and Violet still has further to fall. But then when I look at some of these cards right here, so these are the ones that we looked at last month, and I was talking about them, and I was like, you know, they still look like they're in free fall. You can kind of see what was going on here. But then look at where they are now. Look at where they are this month. Look at what you start to see, and especially in that Pikachu card, especially in that Magikarp card, especially in that Charizard, that Gengar, like, I mean, all of these in that Greninja card right there, like, you're starting to see those support lines form. When you start to see the prices flatten out, that shows you, it's not me telling you, it's not me guessing, like, this shows you that at least on TCG Player, the market is firmly supporting these cards at the current price point. That doesn't mean that they won't drop further in the future. It doesn't mean that they're going to pop up the next day. We don't really know what's going to happen. But we have seen in the past that can be a really strong and compelling indicator that, hey, if you want these cards at a fair price, it certainly looks like the market thinks it's a fair price right now. So we will have to see. I did a whole video last month when I highlighted all of these cards that were reaching their support lines, and I thought they were awesome opportunities to get in on them, and I'm committed to doing that again this month because that video got a lot of engagement. People really seem to enjoy it, so I'm going to do it again this month, and don't be surprised if you see some of these cards on that list as well, because these are definitely flashing support as far as I'm concerned. So next thing we're going to talk about right here, Blackbolt and White Flare. So obviously this is the new set that was officially announced. We all knew it was coming. And I'm kind of on the fence about this set, if I'm being perfectly honest. Now, I love specialty sets. Specialty sets do really, really well. And this is very unique. We have a brand new rarity. We have the Blackbolt and White Flare rarity here, where you have the monochrome cards. We haven't seen that before. This is also going to be the first ever split set here in the US. So Blackbolt is going to be its own set with its own cards. White Flare is going to be its own set with its own cards, right? Like, in Japan, that's how they do things, but we haven't seen that before here in the US, so it's going to be interesting to see what the market demand is for it. But I can't help but compare it to Crown Zenith, and it's not fair because Crown Zenith was such an incredibly awesome set. And when you think about the type of Pokemon that were in Crown Zenith, I mean, my gosh, you had Charizard, you had Mewtwo, you had Giratina, you had Arceus, Dialga. I mean, when you go down the list of the big name Pokemon that were in the set, it just seems to go on and on and on. And I know Blackbolt and White Flare is going to be filled with illustration rares, and I know special illustration rares and all that. We're just going to have to wait to see. I don't know enough about the set. I will tell you this, I have pre-ordered a Blackbolt and White Flare Pokemon Center exclusive ETB, as I always do. I got one of each, very lucky. so I am going to go ahead and take a part in this, but how big I go, I'm just going to have to get more information on it, but I thought it was really cool to call it out. And again, this will be the official end of the Scarlet and Violet era, so I'm very, very excited to see what lies ahead in the future. And the final thing that I always share with you is the actual grading volume at PSA in terms of TCG cards and why I think it's mattered. Like last month was ridiculous. I can't even put it into words. If you saw the video where I went into detail around the most graded cards and sets and singles and all of that, like I could barely speak. I was just so flabbergasted by the results. And what this is right here, those bright blue lines represent the number of cards graded by month at PSA. And if you see, last month there was over 951,000 cards graded at PSA. That is unheard of. I mean, look at how high that jumps above every other month in the history of recording this information since January of 2022. Now, to further put it into perspective, here's what I want you to understand. PSA graded 1.56 million total items. Everything. We're talking about NASCAR, wrestling, baseball, football, basketball, ticket stubs, autographs. 1.56 million total items were graded, and guess what? Out of those 1.56 million, 989,000 were TCG and non-sports, and as you knew from the previous one, 951,000 were TCG cards that were graded. That represents about 63% of all of PSA's grading volume last month came from TCG cards. It is hard to wrap your head around. It is incredible. I think it's exciting for the hobby. I think it shows that so many people are not only invested now, but also invested in the future. So I take this as a good thing. You know, there's a little bit of a concern, and I can understand it from our too many cards getting graded. Could we have, like, I don't know, a grading slab palooza where they don't have a lot of value because all the populations are like 10, 15, 20,000? We're just going to have to wait and see. But at the end of the day, population is only one thing. I say this all the time. Demand is what really matters. When you look at the Moonbreon card, right? Last time I checked, there was over 15,000 PSA 10s of them. It doesn't matter because of the demand behind it. That card will always be the chase card. It will always be the card of the Sword and Shield generation. So I hope you found value in this. I always try and slow down and talk and enunciate better than I traditionally do because it's a lot of information to go through, but I do think it's one of the most impactful videos that we have. I hope you had fun. I hope you enjoyed it, and I really hope that if you did, you hit that subscribe button or give us a thumbs up. Those two small things go a long way in helping me out, and I really appreciate it. I hope you have an epic one, and I'll talk to you soon. Thanks, everybody. Bye.